So what do I mean by automating your recipe costing cards? Let's have a look here at how I've got all the ingredients in this column. And what I want to do is I want to avoid myself from having to input all this information manually, right? Because that takes time. It's a lot easier and a lot faster for me if I have everything here when I press the button, everything comes up, and then all these fields here get populated automatically. So let me show you what I mean. So if I select another ingredient here from the drop down menu, all these is going to change, all these values, right? So now I've got a new cost, new yield, new extension, and so on and so forth, right? So what this will allow me to do is it will allow me to test out different ingredients for a recipe that might be similar in taste and texture, etc., and allow me to arrive at what the best costing strategy will be. Same with all the other ones down here. All right, let's have a look at how we can automate the process of creating your batch recipe costing cards. Your batch recipe costing card is something you need to be really familiar with if you're running any kind of food operation, restaurant, food trucks, etc., etc. So I'm going to briefly go through some of the elements that will be included in your batch recipe card. However, this video is not about explaining how batch recipe cards work. It's about explaining how you can automate the process of using them to save yourself time. So just quickly here, we're going to have a look at some of the elements. So we're going to have the ingredients that you have in your recipe: avocado, coriander, etc. For this example of a guasacaca, which is a Venezuelan avocado salsa. We've got the quantity of each item. We got the recipe unit. Your recipe unit is very important here, right? You need to have all your recipes in the same unit for the sake of using your recipe card. You can't have here kilograms and then grams and then milligrams, etc., etc. You need to convert everything first to one unit, whether it be grams or kilograms, and then start using it. Then we want to have the unit cost, which in this case, as we said, will be kilograms. And then we need the yield for that item. So your yield, again, that's going to be after you've peeled that avocado and you've taken the seed out, how much does it weigh? Like what's left of it? It's 66% of actual avocado. And that'll be on average because, some will be less, some will be more, but we want to work with your averages. And then your extension is going to be the cost of using those 3 avocados. Well, essentially using 66% of those 3 avocados at this cost per kilogram, right? Then we have your total cost, which is going to be the total cost of making this recipe, and the total yield is going to be here 9.5 kilograms of avocado salsa once we've finished up making it. And then the cost per unit is going to be the cost per each kilo of avocado salsa. So if the total cost of making this batch is going to be 108.13 my total yield is 9.5 kilograms, and my cost per unit is going to be essentially this divided by this, right? You can see it in the formula here. Now let's have a look at why we want to automate this. What's the problem here? How can this become so time consuming? Let's have a look at a quick example here. Let's say that I have to add in here every single one of my items by hand, right? So I got to go avocado, capsicum, etc., etc. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. There's no point of doing that. But I just want to give you a bit of an example, right? And then we use 500 grams here, and then I got to go and find, my recipe units. Yeah, it's kilograms. That's fine. We've established that. But then what's the cost of each one of these? And I remember I've got everything in my product list, right? So I got to go back and have a look at it, find that spreadsheet, and then, let's say that's going to be 16, and then this is going to be 2 $2. And remember, guys, this is just an example. Like, these prices or costs are not real. Then I got to go and find out, oh, what was the yield that I get from these? It's 0.66, which is going to be, right, 66%. And then this is 50%. And then I got to go and take my formulas here and paste them here. And, well, you get the idea, right? Like, that took me a fair bit of time to do. And it's just, it's just manual work that can be automated. So why wouldn't I automate it, right? So let's go into another example here where I've got all my formulas already here ready to go. And I've got all of my, my formulas here ready to go. So I simply go here and add each one of the items that I want to use for this specific recipe. Right? You get the point. And then it immediately shows me the unit cost updated. So I've got a table somewhere else updated with all of this information. And then I get all that automatically, right? And then all I have to do is find out how much of each one of these items goes into the recipe and just put it in here. And it starts calculating the total amount, which is pretty cool. So all I need to do is complete these, and, well, you get the idea, right? It calculates everything, and then it calculates these, and then all I have to put in here is, that's my yield, and then I get my cost per unit. So I essentially just did that in a few seconds instead of taking, I think this would have taken me at least a good, half an hour to do and complete, or at least 20 minutes. So I just did that completely, like, in a fully automated way. So let's have a look at how did all this information end up here. All I need to do is go to my master list. So what's very important here is that you need to have a master list of products. So we'll call it master product list, where we're going to have all this information already calculated. So essentially what we want to do is that every single time we calculate the yield for one item, we come in and add it in here. So let's say we added, just to give an example of anything, I think it's already in here, but we'll put in tomato, and we'll say, so 1 kilo of tomato costs $1. It yields, let's say, 80%. Whoops. And I get my reduction here calculated automatically because it's essentially this minus, 100% minus this. I've got my costs here, which I need to keep updated. I need to constantly make sure that all my costs are up to date, so that if I am doing all my recipe cards in this way, then as soon as I change the cost of something, it automatically changes it in every single one of my spreadsheets. That way, if for whatever reason, which it does happen somewhat often, one of my suppliers comes and says, you know what, man, avocado's going from $16.30 to $20. All I need to do here is change $16.30. Let's have a look here. So it's here and it's here. And I go, wow, it's going to $20. It's getting pretty expensive. Boom, it's here now, right? And it's automatically updated the total cost and the cost per unit. Now, this doesn't seem like a lot of work and doesn't seem like it's very relevant when you have one recipe. But when you're running a restaurant and you've been there for a few years and you're at a point where you've got, 20 recipes of, there's recipes that might not be in your menu, but you've already done the work for them. So why would you let that work go to waste just because you're not using those recipes at the time? You might use them in the future. So you want to have all that data up to date in your master product list, so that whenever there's a change in your cost per unit, you can put that in there, and then you get your new margins and you're on top of your numbers, which is the most important thing you got to be on top of at all times. Now let's have a look at how we can build this spreadsheet from scratch. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create our master products list. In here, we're going to add, as you can see, a column with all your items, the unit you want to use, which will be kilograms, grams, liters, ounces, whatever it is, your cost per unit, in this case will be cost per kilogram, your yield, and then once you've added your yield, you need to add your reduction, which is a very simple formula, which is essentially 1 minus this. So 66%, so 100% minus 66% gives you 34%. Pretty simple. I like adding here a link to the item, to the supplier. This is just Coles Online, obviously not a restaurant supplier, but you get the idea. You just add them here, and then once you hover over it and click on it, you can copy the link, edit it, remove the link, and then it simply shows you an image, which I think is pretty cool. I'm gonna add below this video a link to downloading the batch recipe costing card. You probably have your own template, so this shouldn't be much of a problem. So I'm gonna delete all this here and show you how you populate this. We're going to use something called data validation. Yeah. So we're going to go to take all these items and then get them to come up here in this format as a drop-down menu. So what we're going to do here is we are going to go to data and look for data validation. And then once we get this window here, we add a rule, and then we want to apply it to this range. We want to have it as a drop down. You can do a bunch of stuff. We're going to say drop down from a range, and then we're going to take the range. So we go back here and we simply select this whole range, right? Actually, I'm going to do a 1 just because I don't want the word item to come up. Sorry, a 2 actually, because A1 would be this and this would be A2. Right, and then we click OK, and here we go. We've got all of the items here. If you want to get fancy, you can then color, vegetables in green, dry goods in red. What else we can put? Meats in this color, brown, whatever you want to call it. But we're not going to bother too much with that. That's a bit of an extra if you're going to use it. Then we click done, and that's it. We go back here, and here we go. We've got all of our we've got our whole menu here. And as we add, see how it ends here in chicken breast? So if I were to add another product here, we're going to call it beef. And I go back to my template and I go here. There we go. It's here. Beef. Right? So the whole point being that it will, as you add items to your list, to your products list, it will keep them updated automatically. You don't have to worry about that. And then all I need to do is just track this down to as many as I want. Sometimes you'll have 3 ingredients, sometimes you have 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever. So it's not a problem. Then this you need to add manually every single time. And we want to make sure that this is always in kilograms, because that's the unit that we use. So we're gonna use a formula called VLOOKUP to make sure that everything comes up here once this is populated. But before we do that, we're going to take one more step. we're going to take this whole thing here and we're going to create a what's called a named range. So we go to data, we go to named ranges, and we're going to name this range product list. I already got it here, right? So you just change the name here, which I'm not going to save because I've already got it in here. I don't want to do it again. And normally you'd click done, but I'll click cancel because I've already got that in here. So if I were to click on this, you see here it's the same range. And then we're going to go to your template that we're creating, and we're going to say equals VLOOKUP, right? I want to have my search key, which is going to be this word here. Okay. Then I want to have my range, which is going to be my product list. I type product and it comes up. I want to have my index, which is going to be the column that I'm looking for, right? So in this case, recipe unit is going to be in 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be number 3. And then we're going to type in false because it's, oh no, okay. So what happens here is that if this is in alphabetical order, then you don't need to type false. But if it isn't, then you need to type in false, otherwise it'll give you an error. So once I add avocado in here, then it shows me what I'm looking for. To troubleshoot these, if you're having any problems, simply type in here false, and that should get rid of any issues, right? Essentially what this means is that is sorted. If it's sorted in your master list, then don't type in false, but if it isn't sorted, then type in false, and that should solve any issues you may have with doing this, using this formula. Then we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to copy and paste this formula, right? And we're going to use a different index. So what we want here is the unit cost. So unit cost, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, D. And we're going to type in here a number 4. Boom, there we go. I got my unit cost here. We're going to do the same thing with yield, which I think it's number 5. Makes sense. Oh, all right, so that's not the issue. So the problem here is that it's grabbing from here from quantity, which is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for A. There's avocado, same as here, right? Cool, we've got that all done. And now the next step we want to take is then use the formula for extension, which will be anyways in the template that I'm going to leave in the link. And again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time explaining this formula just because there's not really this is not about this video is not about learning how to create a batch recipe card. It's about automating it. There's plenty of videos online about how to use them and create them. So once I've added my formula here, I get a 0, right? That's because I haven't added the quantity here. You need to add your quantities by hand. So you need to manually enter here how many of each you're using. And that's it. Once you've done that, you've essentially automated a very tedious and time-consuming process. Now here, we need to add then your yield, like how many kilograms come out of, this whole batch recipe card. I think it was 9.5 or something. Let's have a look here. 9.5, and then that'll calculate this. Obviously, the formula is not accurate. So not the formula. The numbers are not accurate here because we're still missing a bunch of products in here. So you just have to go through all this and add each one of your products, and then simply take this, scroll down, and the ones that are populated, you will see your numbers changing, and the ones that are not populated, obviously you won't see anything. So we're gonna get rid of this. Okay. And then again, we need to add here how much of each item we're using, but you get the point. And here's my number, right? Everything's been calculated. So ideally you want to create a template, like a copy of this this same spreadsheet when you whenever you're creating a new recipe, and then that should sort out all your problems and help you automate everything. I hope you like this video. Make sure to like and subscribe for more videos like this on how to automate all your processes and procedures in your business.